Got the bed of nails here. Got some spikes to simulate the acupuncture meridians. So it's just nice to do, kind of wake up in the morning. And it's more intense barefoot, but with socks it definitely helps. And this is just a nice little core workout where you try to keep the bubble right in the middle. Nice little body weight exercise. And got a few body working tools all over the place. This is the rapid release, because you can actually hit the bone with this. IT band's really nice, but you can literally hit the spine. Really nice tool. The first one was corded, and this one's actually battery operated, so you can take it with you in the car or whatever. So now we'll go downstairs, show you guys the next room here. So this is the little control room, power room. We have the setup that powers the house, so we're completely off grid here, which is unique in the health community. For someone to be completely off grid, a lot of people have solar, but they're grid tied, which means that they're just supplementing grid power that they're getting from their local electric company. We are completely off the grid. All we have is a telephone line coming up here. That's it. No power. So this is our power. It's currently 8 lithium iron phosphate batteries, and these should last about 8,000 cycles, 7,000 to 8,000 cycles, which a cycle is basically a full discharge of the battery, or 15 to 20 years. So these should last a long time. And then we got 2 10 kilowatt inverters for 20 kilowatt total. And what these do is basically take the power from the battery, put it through here, and then send it to the house. And then these are the charge controllers that connect to the solar panels outside. So today is super overcast, so you can see one of the arrays only bringing in, 60 watts, which is really low. And this one's 342, because that's the newer array that's high powered. But on a sunny day, this will read, I don't know, 4,000, and that'll read, 6,000, 8,000, something like that. So it's been overcast. We got EMP shields, which protect from geomagnetic storms, electromagnetic pulses, lightning strikes, which of all those, the lightning strikes are probably the most probable that would happen. So if a lightning strike were to hit my solar panel, direct hit, it would just fry the components in this and save this really expensive equipment. So over here you can just see basically the overview. 600 watts coming in, the house is using 1,700, and the batteries are at 89% because I ran a generator for 2 hours today. So we have a generator, propane backup, and then we have all this goes to the hydronic floor heat. So these tubes run through the ground on a few of the floors, and this runs on propane. So we actually have non-electric powered heat as a backup, although the wood stove is the main source of heat. And then, excuse the mess, still organizing, but this is the water setup, which looks pretty elaborate. But when I moved here, there was no water filter at all. And this is the main water line, and it's spring water coming in. So we got spring water coming in to the Vicwa, which this is just an affordable system if you're on a spring. If you're on a well, I would recommend something probably more hardcore than this, but it's decent, spring or well. I would not do this municipal, but it's a sediment filter, carbon, ultraviolet, bulb, and then a water softener. And so the water softener, these are basically little beads in here that attach to excess calcium. So we know scaling, calcification happens in our body, but it also happens on your sink, your faucet. And so I just buy pure sodium chloride crystals, and this is the holding tank. A lot of people are familiar with this that have hard water. It's a very basic system, but every once in a while this will go through a cycle where it will make a really concentrated brine solution, and it'll flush this membrane with the brine solution, and that'll basically cleanse those pellets of accumulated minerals, calcium, and then that'll go to the drain. So it's a cycling system that's just automatic with this. So the water is slightly hard here, so it's good to have something like this, but very basic setup. And then it goes here through the fractal water imploder, the Ultra. This is from Dan Winter. That's his vortexing unit that he made. I think it's been around for over a decade. And then it goes through the Analemma water, the whole house system right there. So it vortexes it, and then it runs it through that, which I have an interview on that one. I have 2 interviews with them, which they've done tests with glycanage. They've done plant tests with germinating seeds. And essentially, long story short, they say that it takes a couple of years, 1 to 2 years, to make the water in there. And it's called mother water. And they use lightning strikes, geometric shapes, moon cycles, and they make this water that basically imprints onto other water that passes through it. So they're a little handheld one, a couple $100, that you swirl in your water glass. That's basically made of quartz, and then the inside is the mother water, and the quartz can conduct that information because water carries information. Gerald Pollack's work. I think Gerald Pollack is actually a fan of Analemma, from what I hear, and that passes on the information. So they say it gets rid of energetic contaminants in the water. So I don't know how much of that is in the spring, but it is a seasonal. I mean, it's a spring that refills. So this is not primary water, which means primary water is water that's never been through the hydrological cycle. This water has. So I still want to vortex it and do some things to it, even though it's worlds beyond municipal. So with water, it's just like food. I mean, you can just keep, it's like what you feed your chickens, what you supplement your chickens. I mean, whether it's goats or cows, I mean, you can get crazy with your food just like you can do with your water. And so with water, I've been having a lot of fun. And even after this, sometimes they'll do stuff. You can do infopathy, you can do MRET, pitcher, gem blossom cells. What else? I mean, you could put it on the Somavedic. People do all sorts of things. My favorite's definitely the MRET if I'm going to do something after this process. But this water actually goes through the MitoLife filter, which maybe we can show at the end, since I forgot to show that in the kitchen, the MitoLife drinking water filter. So even though it's going through the system, we're starting at about 30 parts per million. That's the TDS, the water, total dissolved solids. After it goes through that, it still goes through the MitoLife 7-stage filter, because you can see there's still some iron in the water, and that's that browning. And granted, I wasn't here for a while, so maybe that's when the filters just needed to be replaced. But sediment is only going to remove so much. So when I got back here from California, it took me 10 minutes to replace all 3 of these, because it's so easy. You turn off the water, you put a bucket under, you use this tool, you unscrew them, put it in the bucket, dump the water out, get a new filter, which I might have over here. Oh no, so here's one. So this is what it looks like. This is the sediment cartridge. And even though this is very basic, it will actually remove iron from the water. Not 100%, but it'll remove an upwards of 90% of the iron from the water. So that's pretty awesome. So this is basically what's in this one. And then the carbon one's in this one. And then UV is to kill bacteria, viruses, anything that's possibly in that spring water. So that's the water setup. And then tankless water heater, I prefer to a tank system. And there's a dab booster pump that pumps the water throughout the house that's kind of hidden back there. And that'll kick on its variable. So it's, what I like about this pump is it's not on or off. It's on based on the demand. So based on, if you kick a faucet on for a second, it's not going to kick on. It's going to use the water pressure already in the line. But if you kick on the faucet and you're brushing your teeth and you leave it on for 5-10 seconds, then this will kick on. Or you're taking a shower, it'll kick on. So, I mean, all these little things, they sound minute, like they won't matter, but when you're fully off grid, every little detail matters, just like every light bulb matters. You want LEDs, you don't want compact fluorescent, you don't want incandescent, although you can use those, especially if you, I mean, this is a beefy system. Usually the transformers you see on the electrical line, that's one of these inverters, that's 10 kilowatt. I have two, 20 kilowatt of potential of running equipment. And the reason for that is because I have a lot of, equipment, biohacking technology or whatever, that uses power. And we really take power for granted when we're on the grid. And I did. So, living like this, I've gotten to learn just to appreciate all the, creature comforts that we have, because that's an aspect of health, is not taking things for granted. So let's go downstairs. I'll show you the other equipment we have here. So this is the HBOT, Hyperbaric Oxygen Therapy. And you can see all the paw prints from our cats on there. This is a great system. It's a hard chamber. I started with a soft chamber. Soft chambers, it's called HBOT, mild hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And mild is between 1.2 and 1.3 ATA, which is atmospheres of pressure. So you kind of have to go back to physics class and kind of remember, pressure, and there's a lot involved here with this system, with the details. So with this system, it's 2 atmospheres of pressure. And when you get into 2 atmospheres of pressure, a soft shell, like a balloon type, the zip up chamber would not work because it would burst, because that's so much pressure. So in English, what we're talking about is the difference between being 12 feet underwater and being 33 feet underwater, roughly, with the hard chamber. So just to kind of conceptualize what I'm talking about. When you go on an airplane, your ears pop, or when you go diving, like I used to scuba dive, and you have to equalize your ears, same thing, whether you go up or down. But this is a kind of a different thing, because we're actually pumping in oxygen. So you're actually getting a health benefit, unlike being on a plane where you're breathing recycled oxygen. This is actually increasing the oxygen and increasing the pressure, and that's what we call hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That's the formula. It's increased oxygen, increased pressure, and the whole purpose of it is to diffuse oxygen further into the tissues. So tissues like in your brain that are going necrotic, that are deprived of oxygen, we call it hypoxic. Say you have neurons that are barely working, say they're at 50% because they just can't get oxygen, let's say because you have calcification, lipofuscin fibrosis, inhibiting oxygen getting to the tissue, then the increased pressure will bypass all those things and force oxygen through diffusion 4 times further into the tissue. So that way you can actually restore function, but not only in your brain, in your liver, in your kidney, your heart, everywhere throughout the body. It goes systemic. I mean, oxygen goes, you need it, right, to generate energy. It's called the terminal electron acceptor, and it's what pulls electrons across the mitochondria. So it's a very foundational thing. And with my work and what I talk about in researching iron, and now going full circle and kind of changing my message on the iron thing, yes, hemochromatosis can be a problem, yes, iron overload can be a problem, but we don't have to fear ozone and oxygen therapy just because of people fear-mongering iron overload. A lot of people are anemic. A lot of people are iron deficient. And we know those people are fatigued, they're bedbound, they're depressed, because when you don't have iron, you can't carry oxygen. When you don't have oxygen, you don't have energy. When you don't have energy, you get depression and fatigue, and you don't want to get off the couch. So unless you've lived that life, you can't relate to those people. But those people will do anything for energy because they're tired of being tired. And when you add oxygen for those people that don't have a lot of iron, for whatever reason, whether it's genetics or whether it's diet, you know, like I was plant-based for most of my life, just a little bit of oxygen, it's like boom, muscle endurance goes up, strength goes up, energy goes up, memory goes up, brain fog goes away. I mean, everything gets better with oxygen. So you can do exercise with oxygen, EWAT, which I did. I used to have a giant bag that went from the ceiling down to here, and you fill it up with a ton of oxygen, and then you go on an exercise bike and you breathe that, you know, generated from one oxygen concentrator. That's a really entry level way to get into oxygen therapy. Or you can do ozone therapy like I talked about, that's O3, and you have the side benefit of killing pathogens, but you also get saturated with oxygen. That's the high you get when you drink ozonated water or you do rectal ozone or ear insufflation. You're getting oxygen therapy. But of all the therapies I've tried, this one definitely gives me the most like lit up feeling in my brain after I do it. So how it works, and we'll see, hopefully we don't trip the system here, because I kind of forget what's on what circuit. And this might work. I mean, we could just give it a shot. Actually, let me just switch these over here really quick. So this uses a lot of power, which is kind of what I'm getting at right now. So it's, for being off grid, this is not very practical, but you know, I think it's worth it for what you get. So this is the compressor. So inside of here, there's a couple air filters, there's air compressor. This is what generates the pressure that pressurizes this chamber. And so, let me see if I could remember the code here. I think it's something like that. There we go. I always forget the code, but I remembered it that time. And then to put in a bunch of passwords, and essentially, there we go. So we set it to 100% capacity, fastest pressurization and depressurization. And then this is the coolant, which basically this is full of purified water, and dumping it here. And this is sending water through these two blue tubes to keep the system cool. And each one of these uses about 1,000 watts, so we get up to about 4,000 watts total. You only run it for about an hour, hour and a half. So, you know, say an hour and a half. And here's the moment of truth. We'll see if we keep power in the house. Oxygen concentrator, 10 liters per minute, 10 liters per minute. Now, you know, that's going up to 10. That's going up to 10. So these are pulling ambient oxygen from the air from the back and upping it to, when you breathe it in the chamber, you're up to about 96% or so, upwards of 90% oxygen. So you can see this bag filling up and go like this. And now I'm breathing pure oxygen, which is great. This alone does something, but when you're laying inside of there with it, that's when you can actually pressurize it. So there's a little control unit in here, right there. And from here, you could actually control it from the inside out. So you have the outside controls and the inside controls. And there's no chance you're gonna get caught in here because this is pressurized, this door. So when it pressurizes, it'll push it shut like that. And I could actually do a quick demonstration I'll just turn it on and then turn it off to show you guys. That's it. And if I were stuck in, there's an emergency valve back here, the manual. So you're not going to get locked in, and it's a very safe treatment. I would say for epileptics, that might be the contraindication, where you probably epileptics can potentially have increased seizures in a hyperbaric chamber. So you might want to do exogenous ketones, which have been shown to alleviate that symptom. But for the most part, it's a very safe and effective therapy. It's been used for long COVID, which I had, maybe still have. Brain fog is a sure sign of long COVID. It's been used for all sorts of different infections, Lyme disease. People have had great success with hyperbaric. I mean, you think about it, you're increasing cellular energy, you're gonna get a benefit for every single condition out there. This thing's called the salt chamber, and this is from Salt Chamber Company, and what's really interesting therapy, especially if you're into cigars like I am. So this is pure salt, this is pure sodium chloride, and you add it to this little holder, and it's basically just a simple grinder in there, and a little fan. So this grinds it up into micron-sized particles, and it shoots it out into an enclosed space. And this is called halotherapy, where you're breathing small amounts of salt. So it's a very easy setup. I just hooked it up there to the electrical, the magnetic attachment. I close this, you have to lock it for some reason, and then press play. And so if we see in here, it looks like someone's been doing a lot of cocaine in here, but there's actually salt, and this is, yeah, I can already actually taste it. So it's sending it out of here, and it will solidify with moisture, so that's why it's kind of caking the walls. But salt's incredible for so many things. It's a stress reliever for me majorly, just to increase my salt intake in general. And I feel just super relaxed when I use this. So you sit in it, and you taste it, yeah. So just like 3 to 5 minutes, and ideally you're less clothed, because the benefits of this, people say, oh, and why not just inhale salt from a pen or something? Well, one, no company has created a good one that I found, and two, it's transdermal, so you're actually getting benefits for the skin. The salt's going through the skin. And yeah, it's still hitting my face, my hands, but ideally, maybe no shirt, you're in shorts or something like that, and that's it. And then you're gonna get more of a benefit. But you can see I've been using this thing pretty heavily. There's a lot of salt in here, and this is not only for COPD and all sorts of respiratory conditions, COVID, SARS-CoV-2, very beneficial, but just for being in the city, for breathing car exhaust, for all sorts of things, just inhaling salt, it grabs onto mucus. And we talk about this more with Leo Tonkin, the founder of this company, in my podcast, but it's hygroscopic, so it'll actually grab onto water molecules and draw out toxins in your lungs and your respiratory tract. I like it after smoking a cigar, especially with vitamin C. I just feel like, you know, and of course, xylitol gum or brushing my teeth, I just feel fully covered with not, you know, taxing my system. But yeah, usually keep the door shut and it will, and sometimes I cough and sometimes I blow my nose, which is why I keep bamboo facial tissue here, is usually within 3 minutes I'm sneezing and I'm draining my sinuses. It's really powerful. So, and you can see I'm already white in my pants there. I'll just turn it off for now. And then when you're done, and they make tent setups for this, you don't have to get the wooden box necessarily, but when you're done, and salt's cheap, so I could waste this amount, but just go like that, and there's a little brush. And this is, as hard as the therapy is, you just have to clean it out after you're done. And now it's ready for the next session. And so ideally I do this once a day, and I already feel, even with the door open, I feel like my sinuses are more clear and I could breathe better. So really, really effective therapy, halotherapy. This is a failed experiment, which I can talk about. This is a Royal Spa sensory deprivation tank, which I haven't used for a long time, mainly for the reason that I EMF shielded the room when I shouldn't have. So I was a part of that mindset that you should block EMFs. I have since recanted that, and I do not believe that you should ever block EMFs. I don't think that's a healthy way about it. I think we should strengthen ourselves. So I put 2 coats of Y-Shield EMF paint on every part of this, every wall of this room and the ceiling. So basically you don't get cell reception in here, and if you have a cell phone in here, it'll actually hurt because it just bounces around. And so this is a pool with about 1,200 pounds of magnesium sulfate, so you're buoyant. It's called sensory deprivation flotation therapy. But when you're EMF shielded, what I found is I get anxiety. So I realized I had to have the lights on, I had to have music on the whole time. Whereas before, I was in there for three hours with no light or sound stimulation, complete at peace, and I came out peaceful. And here, failed experiment. So when biohacking goes wrong, absolutely, you know, it happens. So what I'm probably gonna do is demo this room, and I might go back to a pod setup. This is a pool system from Royal Spa. You could actually turn it on and it'll circulate. So it has a UV light and a circulation pump, and in between you might be able to see the stream there where it's kicking out the water and it's running it through ultraviolet light. Because you'd think this would get pretty nasty, but with all the salt and occasionally dumping in 35% hydrogen peroxide, it actually stays pretty clean. And I have the lid on just to maintain the temperature because we're fully off grid and I can't afford to just send humidity into the air. I had no lid on it for a while and no insulation foam, and this room was just a humid chamber where I had to refill this once a week. I keep bringing a hose down here. So this has been a game changer. These don't come with lids. I'll probably go back to the pod, and you know, it always doesn't always go exactly how you want it when you're setting things up, but it was a good experiment, an expensive one at that, but a good learning experience. I do recommend sensory deprivation therapy if you have PTSD, or you're prone to being stressed out or overstimulated, or you just have a lot going on in your life all the time. It's a good idea to just completely disconnect and go in a sensory deprivation chamber, and just cut out all noise, all light, you know, any stimulation from your nervous system. It is a full reset. And now there's usually in most cities, there's places you can go to do that. And I think it's more important than red light therapy, than sauna therapy. It's one of the most important therapies because if your nervous system's constantly overstimulated, you can't heal. And red light therapy or sauna, I mean, sauna does help with your parasympathetic activation with your nervous system, but it's not to the same degree as the sensory deprivation. So it's really important to reset every once in a while, especially if you're on social media all the time, getting just that constant stimulation. You have to give your nervous system a break. So now we'll show you the filter as the final. So I forgot to show you guys this in the kitchen, but this is the up and coming, should be out by now by the time of this video, the MitoLife 7-stage drinking water filter, and fits really nice under the counter. Just some stuff in there, an avalanche. And this side actually can come off. There's some screws there, but there's 7 twist off filters in here. Very nice design, not a private label, built from scratch, about 1.5 years in the making, and a little pressure gauge so you can quickly diagnose what's wrong. And it's just hooked up to this faucet up here. And so after going through that system I showed you, going through this system, it's getting magnesium added to it. It has the acids taken out, potential acids with deionization, 2 deionization cartridges, and it's just completely stripped. So this is what we add to our coffee machine. This is, you know, what we use for, I mean, cooking, usually just use water from the sink because it's relatively clean. But if we're doing anything that we're ingesting, any kind of drink, then it's coming from this system. So that's it for the inside. And this is the barrel sauna. About 42 solar panels here, regular raspberries. As you can see, these are pretty much what ties us to the grid currently. You know, roughly 3 years living off grid have just been tremendous and invaluable.